And to talk more on this, let's now bring in a Political Pulse panel this evening. Joining us, we have Liberal strategist Marcel Wieder, Conservative commentator Zoe Knowles and NDP commentator Tom Parkin. Good evening to all of you and thank you for joining me on Political Pulse this week.
Thanks,
Good evening.
Marcel, I'll make a start with you. Yesterday, the Prime Minister talked about nurses who travel from Windsor to the US, while we in Canada, of course, need all hands on deck as well. He's called the move by the United States to ban the export of masks a mistake and said that it would hurt Americans too. And today, the Prime Minister said there will be no retaliatory measure. What do you make of this, Marcel?
Well, Akshay, I'm not a diplomat, but obviously the position of the U.S. president is one that most Canadians find quite repulsive. We're supposed to be allies. We're supposed to be neighbors. That's not how you treat an ally and a neighbor. We rescued Americans on 9/11 and in Tehran, and this is not the way we expect to be treated back. Having said that, I take that the federal government, Minister Anand and Ontario Premier Ford are looking at establishing N95 production here in Canada, in Ontario. Nobody wants to get into a trade war at this time. So we have to be very careful, knowing that the U.S. president is very reactive. And so if we were, for example, the materials for the N95 are produced here in Canada and then shipped to the U.S., if we were to withhold it and divert it to Canadian production, that could trigger a trade war at this critical junction. It's in nobody's interest.
Okay. Zoe, what's your take on this, on the response that's really come in? US and Canada, as we know, of course, share a relationship like none other in the world, and yet we're looking at this situation.
Mm-hmm. Well, Canada should always be a globally minded trading nation. That's how Canada became the great country that it is today. And I don't think this is necessarily about retaliation at this time. I agree with Marcel that a trade war is certainly not one more thing that we need on our plate right now. But I do think we need to critically think about and potentially reassess Canada's reliance on the US. Between blocking 3M from releasing the N95 masks to the governor of Florida making it harder for Canadians to return home from their cruise ships. These are all instances of the U.S. effectively turning their back on Canada when we need them most. And I think it's hard but necessary to recognize that in times of crisis, we may be on our own. And that means we need to have a long-term approach to being more self-reliant in times of crisis.
But what about the Canadian government's response, Zoe?
Pardon?
What about the Canadian government's response to the situation?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I certainly think that retaliation is not what we need to be doing right now, but we do need to be increasing our domestic manufacturing capacity. And longer term, we need to view our domestic manufacturing as not just an economic or commercial transaction, not just view it in dollars and cents, but view it as a critical tool in our national defense, our national security, and our emergency preparedness so that Canada can supply ourselves when the U.S. won't.
Okay. Tom, you know, we've heard from premiers as well. We've heard from Doug Ford yesterday, as of today. We've also heard from, of course, Jason Kenney, and all of them had very strong words for what the United States has done with Canada when it comes to these masks. What do you think? Could the Prime Minister have had a better reaction to the scenario, the situation? Tom?
Well, you know, Akshay, it seems like suddenly a whole bunch of people realize that Mr. Trump is no friend of Canadians. For most of us, I think we've understood that for a long, long time. But, you know, this is a terrible move. It's not just affecting Canada. In, I think, Singapore, the United States intervened and took, I think, 200,000 masks that were headed for Germany that were being supplied out of China. So he's going around the world with his usual American first protectionism, and now it's about healthcare equipment and hurting his allies. So, you know, I won't disagree with what anybody on this panel has said. We can't rely on others. We're on our own here with respect to our American friends anyway. We have to get our domestic supply up, and we have to look at our manufacturers to be switching over as fast as possible. We heard on Friday that this could go on for quite some time, months, perhaps years. So this is something that could use some investment. And if it takes some money to retool factories, I think our federal government has to be there to be a partner.
Okay, I want to now talk about the other issue that many are talking about. It's a pressing one, and the issue of modeling data. Several countries, as we know, have come out with their data. And yes, it does paint a grim picture. At some levels, it also creates a panic where the public is concerned. But health professionals believe that we should have that because it sort of gives them an idea of how to prepare where this pandemic is concerned and what's expected to come. Now, we know Ontario shared their data yesterday. Alberta has said they will do it in the early next week. Should Canada as a country disclose this data? Should we have more transparency? Zoe, I'll start with you on this one. Where do you stand with this?
I think Trudeau should release the national projections. And in fact, I think he needs to adopt an approach of radical transparency that we've seen from the likes of Premier Doug Ford. By releasing those projections, Canadians can know what Trudeau knows, and we can know the evidence that goes into his policy decisions. In times of crisis, effective, honest, transparent communications are more important than ever. And the Prime Minister cannot afford to lose the confidence of Canadians at this time.
But the Prime Minister did say, Zoe, that this has to be a little more accurate. He's waiting for more data to come. He never said that he will not be sharing it. He said it could take time and he wants more data to really come in before he can present any projections to the country.
I think that's a mistake. I think it's a mistake to keep waiting and not give Canadians the full picture. We're seeing real leadership from the provinces, as you mentioned, Ontario, soon Alberta, and soon Quebec as well, in releasing the modeling, releasing those best worst case scenarios so that Canadians know just how hard it might get. And I think that Trudeau needs to do the same, not only by releasing the projections, but indeed he needs to be the one to set the standard for radical transparency and for being honest with Canadians about what we're facing down the road.
Okay, stay with me, please. I want to now bring in Tom. Tom, the Prime Minister, like I just said, has been saying that we need more data where modeling is concerned. But, well, data is being shared by provinces on an hourly basis in the last 3 weeks, like we have seen. So what's your thought?
Well, I think actually, Akshay, it's a missed opportunity to not provide the information because governments can do a lot, and we've seen our medical system respond. But so much of this is in the hands of us as individuals, and this is a chance to show that each of us has some power here, and by showing us the models of if we go to work as usual, if we take transit as usual, or if we stay home, or if we close our businesses, close our schools, that's the power that we have. Government can't do all of that. But certainly we don't want to give up our liberties, but we can make those choices. So I think it's a missed opportunity for Mr. Trudeau to tell us, to make us a partner and say, listen, we have the power, we can protect ourselves, and there's going to be a couple crucial weeks. We all got to really lay low, close the businesses, reduce the contacts.
Okay, Marcel, so you heard from, of course, strategists there from both the Conservatives as well as the NDP. One says it's time now for radical transparency. The other, of course, saying this is a missed opportunity. What should be the strategy here, Marcel? What do you think?
Well, Akshay, let me remind you and your viewers that healthcare is a provincial responsibility. And so the provinces are the ones who are in the best position to release numbers of what's affecting their citizens. And so we have a situation across the country where different provinces are at different rates of infection and are modeling different things. So what's happening in BC is how their modeling is different than what's in Ontario. So releasing national numbers doesn't really help anyone. Somebody in PEI is going to be really concerned with what's happening in Saskatchewan. It's provincial authorities who can direct their local communities with the important information that
Marcel,
they need.
I'd like to just interrupt you there. A, it's a shared responsibility where the federal government and provinces are concerned. B, if you look at what's happening amongst people all over the country, they want to know. So for you to say that it doesn't matter because, it's a very provincial issue, province by province, but there are Canadians all over the country who want to know. Because if other countries in Europe, United States have a modeling data and it gives you a clearer picture of where we could be if we do not take measures as of now, why shouldn't Canada have it? That's what people are asking, Marcel.
Well, no, Akshay, what's happening is if you look in Europe, healthcare is a national responsibility in most of the EU countries. So they're able to provide that type of data. In Canada, we have 10 provinces and 3 territories. And so the federal government is relying on those different health ministries to provide the information The federal government doesn't have the ability to go into each province and measure each hospital and all the test results. Those are all being done.
So you're saying the federal government, sorry for interrupting there, doesn't have the capability. I want a quick reaction both from Zoe and Tom on this. Zoe, your quick response to what we've heard from Marcel.
Well, even though healthcare is under the provincial purview, this is a coordinated effort between all the provinces. And indeed, in an emergency that we're in, we need to see leadership from the highest national level, from the Prime Minister.
And you are. And you are, Zoe.
Okay.
The Prime Minister
we need more.
Canadians
deserve more. Canadians deserve more in this crisis. We need more.
Okay, Marcel, give me a moment. Marcel, give me a moment. Tom, what's your response to this?
Well, you know, Mr. Trudeau needs to level with us if that's what his concern is, you know, that this is a problem of federalism. I haven't heard him make that case. So the case that he's made is, well, I don't know what the case is that he's made. I watched the press conference, but I didn't really hear an answer. You know, again, it's a missed opportunity. The biggest thing that we can do in the next few weeks is talk to people and say that we're all together on this and we're gonna do our best. And to the extent that he can show us that we have the power to make change and save lives through little actions by just simply staying home or telling our employees they don't come to work for a couple of weeks, it makes a huge difference.
And Tom, he's doing that. He's repeated that message. You know, Dr. Tam has repeated that message. Other federal leaders have repeated that message to stay home, to wash your hands, and to distance yourself. So that message is getting across every day.
Sure, that message is definitely getting across, Marcel. But the point is, of course, the question is about modelling data and whether or not Canada should release it. Well, like I said, the Prime Minister outrightly never said no, but he said he's waiting for more data to come. So let's see whether or not we'll have those modelling projections where all the country is concerned. We leave it at that. Thank you so much, Liberal strategist Marcel Wieder, Conservative commentator Zoe Knowles, and NTV commentator Tom Parkin for joining us. And stay safe, all of you. And thank you for joining me from your homes tonight.
Thank you. Take care.